UVM put the brakes on a project by another Vermont facility that could be taking up the reins. What one hospital is asking from the state to open a youth psychiatric unit.
A group that's advocating for low-income Vermonters is rallying together to talk about programs, federal and state programs, that are being pushed back. I'm Hailey Morgan, and I'll tell you the stories of those who are being affected right here on the Channel 3 News.
A homeless shelter resident accused of brutally murdering the woman who runs the shelter. I'm Adam Sullivan in Brattleboro. The story coming up.
Live from Vermont's own WCAX, the Channel 3 News This Morning starts now.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for choosing Channel 3 this morning at 4:30. I'm Alexandra Montgomery. A Brattleboro woman accused of brutally murdering a homeless shelter employee with an axe was arraigned. We have a warning for you. The details of this case may not be suitable for some viewers. Our Adam Sullivan reports from court.
The facts of the alleged murder are disturbing. A shelter coordinator here in Brattleboro being brutally attacked by a woman staying in the home. 38-year-old Zaina Mavish Jameh did not speak at her arraignment Tuesday. Her lawyer entered a plea of not guilty to the first-degree murder charge on her behalf. The alleged murder happened Monday morning at the Morningside house. Court paperwork states Mavish Jameh, a resident at the shelter, specifically asked to meet with the victim before attacking her with a hatchet that she had purchased just 2 days earlier.
I am sure that there will be a lot of community conversations about this case going forward, but right now I would ask folks to focus on the fact that Leah Rosen Pritchard lost her life.
Shelter coordinator Leah Rosen Pritchard suffered injuries to her face, neck, and torso and was pronounced dead at the scene. The bludgeoning was captured on security video at the house and was witnessed by at least 2 other staff members. Court papers state Mavish Jameh was heard shouting, "I like you, it's Leah I don't like." Mavish Jameh had been living at the house for months.
I don't have an exact time on that, but she had been there at least for some time, possibly as long as since last summer.
During the arraignment, the judge ordered that Mavish Jameh undergo a mental evaluation. Groundworks Collaborative, the organization that runs the shelter, issued a statement that includes, Leah Rosen Pritchard is irreplaceable. She was a wonderfully strong, positive, beautiful, and compassionate person who gave generously of her spirit and skills in support of all Morningside House residents and her professional colleagues. It went on to say, there are no words to express the depth of loss felt by her Groundworks teammates, and our hearts go out to her family and friends.
What hits personal for me is that there definitely are larger community conversations that we need to have, but we can't escape and we can't ignore and we can't disrespect the fact that someone lost their life.
The defendant is being held without bail until that competency hearing. If convicted, she faces the possibility of life behind bars. Reporting from Brattleboro, Adam Sullivan, Channel 3 News.
As demand for inpatient mental health treatment for kids skyrockets, a Bennington Hospital is exploring whether it has the means to open a new unit. Our Christina Guessferd reports.
In partnership with the Vermont Mental Health Department, Southwestern Vermont Medical Center is conducting a feasibility study right now. Last year, UVM Health Network proposed building a new youth psychiatric unit at the Children's Hospital, but leaders backed out, citing budget cuts. That's when SVMC stepped in. After examining their facility for months, hospital leaders say they have identified a site on the Bennington campus where they could fit 12 beds plus support spaces like sensory and counseling rooms. The unit would serve adolescents ages 12 to 17 and could treat patients with coexisting minor, stable medical conditions. It would cost $9.2 million to construct and $7 million annually to operate. If the hospital invests in this major renovation, leaders say they need the state to commit to expense reimbursement for at least 3 to 5 years.
SVMC's goal isn't to make money off this unit. The goal is to provide this as a statewide community service and to basically have our expenses covered. We just can't lose our shirt in running this service.
As for staffing, Planning Director James Tremarkey tells me neighboring Dartmouth Health has agreed to provide physicians. SVMC will hire nursing and support staff. He says the feasibility study should finish this month. To move forward, the hospital would require approval from its board of trustees, then the Green Mountain Care Board. If all the pieces fall into place, the unit would open no earlier than late 2024. Right now, the Brattleboro Retreat is the only facility in Vermont with inpatient mental health beds for kids. In the studio, Christina Guessferd, Channel 3 News.
A plea in Montpelier to help people struggling to make ends meet. Our Hailey Morgan was at the State House where religious leaders made their case for the state to replace all of the federal COVID cash.
Somebody's denying us housing, and it's gone on far too long.
Religious leaders and members of the Vermont Poor People's Campaign gathered at the State House to ask lawmakers for help. The Vermont Poor People's Campaign is an organization that advocates for low-income Vermonters. They want to stop the rollback of universal school meals, the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and Medicaid.
We can do better, Vermont.
Yes, we can.
Let us call on our elected officials to find the audacity to stand with us. Let us summon from them the courage to create just and moral budgets and policies. Let us insist that housing and food are basic human rights.
Recipients on those programs got a boost in benefits when the pandemic hit, and now that extra money is going away. Organizers noted the changes could mean 29,000 Vermonters will get kicked off Medicaid. Leah Duckett is one of them and is worried about accessing health care.
Having Medicaid through this pandemic has been a blessing for me, and I am worried about what the future will be like when I, like so many other Vermonters, lose my health insurance.
State lawmakers say changes to federal funding are the reason for the return to pre-pandemic benefits. Senator Rebecca White says state officials are working on continuing universal school meals and creating more housing opportunities. But some things are out of their control, like Medicaid.
But my understanding is that this is a federal requirement, so we as a state are not actually able to continue to keep those folks on Medicaid as it stands.
Leading Democrats have told Channel 3 multiple times this session that it's not possible for the state to pay for these programs introduced during COVID, now that American Rescue Plan money has run out. In Montpelier, Hailey Morgan, Channel 3 News.
Vermont lawmakers advance a sweeping bill funneling millions towards roads, bridges, and more. I'm Calvin Cutler on the Channel 3 News with why the plan will cost you more at the DMV.
Good morning, everyone. It's now 4:40. Vermont's House of Representatives advances the largest ever plan to bolster infrastructure. But that proposal could mean you pay more when you head to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Here's Calvin Cutler.
All said and done, fees at your local DMV could be rising about 20% across the board. It's aimed at raising revenue for the annual transportation bill and matching federal infrastructure funds which are coming our way. Ronald Sear made the drive from Barrie Tuesday to renew his registration.
I'm going to do it for 2 years because I saved $12 by doing it for 2 years.
He's about to pay $149, but under a proposal in Montpelier, he'd be paying more, about $179. Just about everything at the DMV, licenses, plates, registration, and others are. Sear is also on a fixed income and says any increase will be a pinch.
I got to really budget my money, so I'll have to use more of that for this and take away from something else, probably.
The fee hike is part of this year's transportation bill, totaling $850 million. It's the largest in state history. New fees at the DMV will raise about $20 million, which lawmakers want to use to pay the state match for federal infrastructure funds coming from the feds next year.
A big emphasis on bridges and making sure that our bridges are strong, and bike and pedestrian and alternative transportation options for Vermonters.
The bill also carves out big investments in EVs, airports, and railroads. But the Scott administration is concerned about the plan.
It's really tough for the people who can afford it the least, especially when it isn't necessary.
In his budget, the governor recommended saving $150 million for the federal match out of state surpluses. Transportation Secretary Joe Flynn says the fee increases will impact Vermonters and could raise prices for small businesses and their customers.
And when the cost of those vehicles permit fees and everything go up, that's generally transmitted to what it is those companies do. And in the end, it's a regressive tax.
But lawmakers are earmarking surpluses for other priorities they say will help low-income and working Vermonters. Paid family leave and childcare. Coffee says this would be the first time the state raised DMV fees in 6 years.
We're balancing, a lot of things, and we also know that this is a way for us to continue to maintain our critical infrastructure.
The proposal now moves to the state Senate, where they'll spend the next 6 weeks building their own plan for state infrastructure. Reporting in Montpelier, Calvin Cutler, Channel 3 News.
'Tis the season where some Vermont birds need a little space. The nesting practice closing some walking trails.
Generating natural gas minus the carbon footprint. I'm Kevin Gaiss in Berkshire. The benefits to one farm and the state ahead.
Walkers, watch out if you're headed out for a hike. Our Bendavid shows us why some trails are closed in this week's Wildlife Watch.
Just off of Route 73 in Windsor County, everyone is looking up.
We are looking at the Great Cliff, or Mount Horrid, and this is a known peregrine nesting site. We're on National Forest. We're looking at National Forest land.
Susan Stats is a biological technician with the U.S. Forest Service based out of Rochester. Even on this cold day, spring is here and warmer weather is right around the corner, which is why they're looking at the cliffs on Mount Horrid.
Well, we're looking for falcons. They've arrived. They're back. They're claiming their territories on our various cliffs around the state.
Specifically the peregrine falcon, which at one point was an endangered species in the state.
Due to the use of chemicals in the environment, specifically DDT and the thinning of the eggshells. So they were laying eggs, but a lot of the eggs were just cracking and ruined because of the thinness of the eggshells. Ever since their recovery happened, we started monitoring their historical cliff sites for their return. And so in order to, keep maintaining their presence on the landscape as part of a top predator, and knowing that they need these specific kind of habitats, we monitor them.
For me, they are just sort of this iconic endangered species success story.
Margaret Fowle is a biologist for Audubon, Vermont. She says the state estimates there are currently about 60 pairs of the peregrine falcon.
I feel really good about the number. The historic records were show that there were probably about 32 active sites before the decline in the early part of the 1900s, and but there were 60 cliffs or so that had been identified as having evidence that peregrines use them. So we're back to beyond historic levels. So we're feeling pretty good about our population and how it's doing.
But to help the populations and nesting, some hiking trails will be closed from March 15th to August 1st. Officials say there will be signs to clearly mark the trails that are closed.
Probably out of the 60 sites, there's probably 12 or so that have some kind of closure, whether it's to climbing or hiking. So the birds are most sensitive to people above them on their nest site or climbing near a nest site.
That also includes a part of Mount Horrid in Rochester.
Like, they're not nesting right now, but when they begin, it keeps them off their nest. It could keep them away from their eggs too long. And, even through the whole nesting cycle, even if they've got nestlings in the nest, if they're kept away from the nest too long and not bringing food, you can disrupt that whole thing. We're just hoping that people respect the closures because, the signs are up, the information is there. It's, really important to protect these birds, give them a chance to nest and raise their young. Their cliff sites are so specific that, any kind of disturbance will just, lessen their chance of success.
For more information on the peregrine falcon, we'll have that on our website, WCAX.com. In Rochester, Bendavid, Channel 3 News.
Competing for space in natural gas lines. That's the vision for a farm in Berkshire. A digester is being planned at Pleasant Valley Farm, home of the St. Pierre family in Berkshire. Our Kevin Gaiss takes us there to find out what their cows will do.
It's a boiling day for Pleasant Valley Farms' sugaring operation.
We make maple syrup and milk dairy cows.
A common combo in the Green Mountain State as farms have diversified. But there's nothing common about the future of their farm.
It seems like there's more better options for dairy farms to produce renewable natural gas instead of electricity.
Pleasant Valley already has a digester turning cow manure from their 4,000 dairy cows into electricity. They use some of that power to keep the lights on in their sugar house. This type of electricity generation accounts for about 1% of Vermont's renewable energy generation. But now they're tripling digester capacity. And instead of generating electricity, they'll be creating renewable natural gas, purified from biogas, being cooked out of cow manure.
The dairy markets are up and down, so it's nice to have an income stream different from the milk market.
With our carbon footprint, we always want to look at that and try to do the best we can.
The St. Pierre brothers say the goal is to convert their sap boilers to natural gas, to cut the cord on fuel, cutting carbon, and making their farm a more circular ecosystem.
How to do, like I said, do the best for our state with our cows and our maple trees, and try to look at the most cutting-edge practices to do the best we can as farmers and stewards of the land.
But there'll be more natural gas generated than just to power a single sugar house. It'll be injected back into Vermont Gas's lines and made available to all Vermonters.
What we're doing now is decarbonizing the natural gas lines going to your house.
This is Novilla RNG's development, a nationwide developer out of Michigan. They say this will be the second renewable natural gas facility on a farm in Vermont, and the first run entirely on cow manure.
And so this is a negative carbon intensity fuel that will be made available to Vermonters.
Vermont Gas says right now renewable natural gas makes up about 2% of their sales, but that could grow to up to 12%. For the fourth generation dairy farmers, they see renewable natural gas production as another way to stay viable. So hopefully down the line, the fifth generation can take over.
A diversification that help make your farm, financially stronger, so you can transition it to the next generation, and you got to pay the bills first, so this could be a good opportunity for us.
Reporting for the Channel 3 News, Kevin Gaiss in Berkshire, Vermont.
Still ahead, the Lincoln Community School went independent last fall. New this morning, we check in and see how that school has been running by itself.
Well, not too bad start to the day. Right now, our cloudy skies here in Burlington, the temperature of 37. We're coming up to the mid-40s here in the Champlain Valley. We're looking for a wet day today, possibly some thunderstorms, but the biggest trouble is going to be some icing east of the Green Mountains, parts of northern New York. I'll break down what you can expect in the Max Advantage forecast next.
Hi everyone, it is 4:53 on your Wednesday morning, also known as Hump Day, right in the middle of the week. All right, Gary.
Yeah. We have a big hump to get over today as far as the weather goes. We actually have a stretch of nice weather coming up, but boy, we've got a couple of days that we have to get through to get there, so we're going to be paying the price up front. Well, let's take a look and see what's going on right now. You can see that we do have a little bit of a wintry mix up in our northern areas, especially up into the Northeast Kingdom, northern New Hampshire. We're starting out with a little bit of snow shower activity, but also some of those pinks on the radar indicating a little bit of a wintry mix out there, and we're going to see more of that as we go through the day today. Let's open up the shot and show you what's back to our west. We have this big storm system that developed yesterday, and it is raging away, bringing blizzard conditions to the upper Midwest and all sorts of weather into the Great Lakes. When you see all those pretty colors, blues and pinks and greens, that means we've got snow, but also some icing and some rain showers, and the bulk of that is going to be staying to our north, but we're going to get our share of it too. And the cold front part of this, which goes down into the southern plains, again firing up some strong thunderstorms. Already have some tornado warnings in parts of southeast Missouri. Wicked weather is going to be staying way down to our south, but we're going to get our share of some not so great weather today. Here are the temperatures now. Notice that we're in the low to mid 30s to the north, still warmer down to the south with some 40s. We have a 45 Brattleboro, and look at Bennington coming in at 50 degrees right now. But you look at St. Jay, where it's right at the freezing mark, below the freezing mark at Newport. We're going to bring those temperatures up a little bit, but that's going to be the trouble. It's going to be kind of close to freezing as we get into the Northeast Kingdom. Here in Burlington, we're at 37 degrees, and the winds are out of the northwest right now at 8 miles per hour. The pressure holding steady, 30.32 inches. Going through the day today, here's what we can expect. We're going to start out with that little bit of a wintry mix in the morning, but it's more as we get into the afternoon. We're expecting a round of some heavier rain coming in, possible thunderstorms, and as it pushes across the Green Mountains, it runs into that cold air, so that's where we get that pinkish color, and that's our problem area. We can see some freezing rain. It's mainly going to be in like on bridges, elevated surfaces, not so much the roads this time of the year, but there could still be some slick spots out there, so be careful of that. And as go through the rest of the afternoon and into the evening hours, we're still looking at that pattern, sort of on and off waves of these showers and possible thunderstorms. A little bit of a break during the overnight, but then as we get towards tomorrow morning, we're looking at a few showers and maybe a rumble or two of thunder coming out through, and one last gasp out of this system, and that's going to be during the day tomorrow, mainly the first half of the day, and especially in our eastern and southern areas before this thing gets on out of here, and we're going to start to clear out the skies tomorrow night. One last little gasp out of this in the form of a few mountain snow showers early Friday before we really clear out. Friday's going to be a blustery day, but once we get past that, the weekend's looking good, and beyond that as well. We do have a winter weather advisory in effect in northern New York, and especially east of the Green Mountains. That's where we could see up to 1/4 of an inch of icing on some of those elevated surfaces. After that, Friday will be partly sunny but blustery, a high of only 44. After that, high of 61 on Thursday, and then over the weekend, we're slowly going to be warming up with a lot of sunshine, 45 on Saturday, but mid-50s for Easter Sunday, and take a look at those low to mid-60s as we get into next week.
A horrifying axe attack leaves a shelter worker dead.
I am sure that there will be a lot of community conversations about this case going forward, but right now I would ask folks to focus on the fact that Leah Rosen Pritchard lost her life.
Coming up, the disturbing details from court as the Brattleboro community works to understand why. Plus, drug charges are putting a Colchester man behind bars for 4 years. When Channel 3 This Morning continues at 5, why he may sound familiar.